So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here this afternoon. My name is Alice Jansen, and I'm the Education Director with the Texas Children in Nature Network, and we appreciate you all being with us this afternoon for this webinar called Building Relationships with Nature, Exploring a University Course that Infuses Time and Nature to Positively Benefit Students' Well-Being, with Dr. Courtney Crim and Dr. Laura Allen with the Trinity University Department of Education. And I just want to point out that Courtney Crim is one of our lovely board members. So thank you for all your hard work. And then we also have Melissa Mullins helping us with our tech today. She'll be taking attendance. She is also one of our board members, and we appreciate all of her support. So thank you all, resident board members, on this webinar. We do have automated closed captioning available for this webinar. You can click the Show Captions CC button on the Zoom toolbar. For the live transcript options, you can also save that transcript. We are recording our session today, so to save bandwidth, we ask that everyone please turn off their cameras and mute themselves during the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat, and we also have our Executive Director, Sarah Coles, with us this afternoon, and she will also be looking at chat. And we will be looking for your questions, so please share them there in the chat, and we will share them with Courtney and Laura after their presentation during the Q&A part of the webinar. And then I just want to take this opportunity to insert my friendly reminder to please be kind to each other when posting questions and comments in the chat. We're all here to learn and have fun. Also, I will be sharing the recording link of today's session in a follow-up email. If you are uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then private message Melissa with your name for our attendance. You can change your name by hovering over your name in the participant list and then clicking the three dots that appear there. Also, if your Zoom name does not match the name you registered with, we ask that you change your name or private message Melissa with your name so that it matches. And then this part is very important, so please listen carefully. Only registrants that attend the live webinar are eligible to receive a certificate of completion. We do not automatically send all attendees a certificate. You must request the certificate after attending the live webinar. The email you received with the webinar Zoom link has the specific instructions for requesting the certificate. As mentioned, we do take attendance during the live webinar, and we will be sending out the completion of certificate of completion if you request it. So I guess the most important thing to remember is that your name that you're registered with needs to match the certificate that we issue. I'm going to go ahead and read our land acknowledgement. The Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I am on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sana people. Our ongoing colonial presence on Indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step toward that effort. I will also put some information in the chat here in a moment so you can learn more about land acknowledgements and these Indigenous peoples groups. So once again, I want to thank you all for being here. We have a very special webinar planned for you all today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Courtney and Laura to get started. Thank you.
We're going to share our screen really fast if you'll give us just a second or two to get that going. But we really appreciate everybody taking time to be here today. We know days are really busy and you're all doing a lot. So know that being here and sharing this information with us is really special for us. And we hope you have a lot of questions at the end. We've tried to leave a lot of space for some questions. Laura and I have been, I guess, now working in this direction for about 6 years now. And it started with Laura plopping down in my office and showing me the Nature Fix book by Florence Williams. And it's like, have you read this? I'm like, I have not. And we read it and we're just really fascinated with the information that she had and knew that this was going to be important for students, really wanted to work with students on our campus about working with their anxiety and depression and using nature as a way to help their well-being. And so we talked to them all the time, oh, you've got to get outside. Here's the research. This really is great. And over again, the response we got from them was like, I don't have time, you're making this worse, because they just have so much on their plates and so much on their schedules. And so that was kind of the impetus for us to really start looking at how can we build something that will make it easy for them to actually have that time in nature. And so this is where the class idea originally came from. And so as we started this work, we're not going to do a whole lot on the research here. We're going to spend most of the time talking about the course. But as we started the work, we were able, I mean, there's more research than you can possibly digest, and it's coming out so quickly from around the world. But as we were reading and really looking at the research, we wanted to create something that would make it easy for people to see, okay, here are some very simple benefits that being in nature can do for your well-being. So this is a graphic that our team put together just early in the beginning and breaks it up into the areas of development, as you can see. So you've got physical, cognitive, social, and emotional, and just kind of shows you that if spending time in natural environments will either increase or decrease many of these elements. And so we just share this with you because we have a link we're going to share later that has all, like, a lot of the actual research articles. But a lot of people either don't have time to dig into those, or, you know, quite frankly, don't want to read a dense academic article for that information. So, so one of our early publications had this in there to really kind of make it simple for people to digest on, this is what we're aiming towards, this is what we want to work towards. And so in developing our course and putting it together, these were the factors that we were keeping in mind as we were building something that we hoped would help our students.
Thank you, Courtney. So as Courtney said, the first few years of working with this, our research team would just do the typical traditional research, have undergraduates and graduates go out and walk, for example, randomly sample and half walk in an urban, half walk in a nature, and take different instruments and different biometric measures. And we found exactly what the research did, that it is beneficial for all kinds of well-being, but telling students that was not helpful. And we know how stressful this is, because what's interesting is 4 out of the 5 members of our research team had children in high school and college at the time that we started this work. And so we saw firsthand the stress they were all under. So what we thought about is, you know, we need to create the space for them to learn about this and to actually practice these types of things. So we came up, it took a couple years. And Courtney and I developed this course called the Natural Environment and Wellbeing. It's an upper division course. It's 3 hours, and it intentionally has no prerequisites so that anyone at Trinity can take the class. It counts for not only education requirements and environmental studies requirements, but also 2 general ed requirements that everybody has to take. So, and we intentionally did that so that it would be something everybody would need to check off anyway. Because I don't know about y'all at college, but, you know, students often, if they don't get something for it, they don't feel like they have space in their schedule for that. So our goal in creating this course, and it has come a long way, we first taught it in fall 21, is to combine the theory, the research, and the practice all together. And by theory, we mean all of the research base. By research, we mean we want students to be able to collect some of their own original data and then compare it to the literature base to see what happens with their bodies when they spend time in nature, and then to develop some practices that we hope they will continue to use after the course is over with. We offer it on Wednesday afternoons from 2:30 to 5:30. So that we can go on field trips, because you really don't have the transportation time within like a typical 50-minute or 100, you know, or a 70-minute class period to do that, plus 1 full day field trip. Our promise is that 50% of class time will be outside, and most of the time that's off campus on field trips. Those include urban parks, they include natural areas, and plus the full day field trip is at a state park. We do forest therapy walks on 2 of those. Courtney and I are both certified forest therapy guides because during the pandemic, we thought we had nothing else better to do than to just, we'll just become certified forest therapy guides. And we find that really resonates with some of the students, and then some of them that's not their thing. So because we have such a diverse group of students in the class, but we do lots of different things. And we use some textbooks. We use, at the beginning, we did use Florence Williams Nature Fix, but now we are using Richard Liu's Last Child in the Woods, excuse me, because we are education. And we also are using Ben Page's Healing Trees book about forest therapy, plus just a wealth of research articles, because we feel like it's really important for them to see the actual hard research academic articles. And we have a Google folder full of those we can share with you later on. Our course syllabus is also located on our digital commons site, which we can also post in the chat. So just a little bit more about the class. We designed the course using essential questions. So we had 4 units. One was, how did we get where we are in nature? What are we doing to our world and what's happened? Then we go into the research theory and mechanisms. Why? What do we know now about how nature is beneficial for use? And we really focus on the fact that in the past, a lot of that research was correlational, but now we're getting some really meaningful causal studies, and we look at those. Then we apply this to schooling contexts and environments. And we have a really interesting project we do around that. And then we also look at equity, inclusion, and reciprocity as far as something that I know I was talking to Courtney yesterday. We're planning the class for this fall. So it starts in a couple of weeks. Is that I really did not realize that diverse individuals don't all have the same experience walking out in nature that I've always had growing up. That was a real eye-opening experience to me. And so we want our students to have that and be aware of that as well. So we have some major assignments. One is a sit spot, which students go out 30 minutes to a natural space every week and observe and reflect. And then they do a short reflective journal format, and they upload a photo, and then they just write something about that. That's to help them develop that practice, and it's very hard for them at first. The very first class, we actually go and do a sit spot with them out in a natural space to help them with that. We do photo stories, which Courtney's actually currently in the midst of doing a huge research project. So do you want to talk about photo stories for a minute?
Sure. It's really interesting, and we're going to share an article link with you in a little bit that shows a couple of the examples. But we are really looking at the idea of bringing aesthetics into the course and having students really have to look at things in different ways. We know that increases the complexity of the thinking. But also, being a liberal arts school, we have some really hardcore STEM students, and we have some humanities students who are just like really want to bring in that interpretation piece as well. So photo stories gives us a chance to do that. And we ask them to, at some point, take a photograph of something when you're outside. It can be during your sit spot. It can be one of our field trips, but where they see themselves reflected in nature, or where they see nature mirroring back to them something that they are learning or have learned about themselves. And then to create kind of like a mixed media image of it. So they use the photograph as their base and then use digital components to kind of add to it and create a message. And then they write a narrative, like an artist statement that explains what it's about. And I've been working with a team of 5 of our previous students on analyzing the narrative pieces of this. And it's really fascinating on how much they really tap into their own identity. This is a great age because, 18 to 22, they're very egocentric. They're supposed to be. They're learning about, who am I? How do I fit into this? And this gives them an opportunity to really illustrate visually and linguistically how they see themselves connected with nature in different ways. So it's been really hard to analyze, to figure out a way to do it. But they listed as one of their favorite assignments. And so they do a series of 4, we're now cutting it back to 3 over the course of the semester. And then they've got the 3 that they've done. And then for their last one, we actually give them the new part of the assignment, which is now look at your 3 and what themes or threads do you see of your own growth or your own, I guess, reflection that you've kind of tapped into over the semester. And they're really fascinating. They love it.
Yeah, it is a favorite assignment. Another assignment that is really interesting is a green space design project. And we work with Amalia Solers at Northside Independent School District here in San Antonio. She has elementary schools that have gotten small grants for Acorn project grants to develop outdoor spaces. And so our students use the theory behind attention restoration theory and some of the other research that they've learned to go and help design those spaces based within the constraints of the budget that schools have. And that has been something that's been, we feel like, really successful over the last few years. And we've continued that. I think one thing that's important to say, this is a really different type of course. We have no exams. They're all kind of ongoing practice-based things, like the sit spots are every week. The photo stories are ongoing throughout the class. The greens, I mean, some of these are a point in time type of project, but there are no actual exams. We do reading quizzes, but we let them take them twice because we certainly don't want to do this class and then increase their stress, right? But we do want them to engage with the content at the same time. So that's a little bit different. Participation and attendance is really important. And so we have that as pretty high on our rubric. If you miss a lot of classes, you're not going to do well because you can't make up a field trip. So that's just something that these are things that are different about the class, but it's also overwhelmingly something that students love. And it's often students will say it's their favorite class. So we're really happy about that.
I'll add one thing onto this. From the first year that we taught it to the second year that we taught it, we did have to make a pretty sizable shift in the fact that we had started with just straight on forest bathing and, using Ben's book on healing trees. And most of the students who, because we were just piloting it, hoping we got 12 students so we could keep the class. We ended up with 25, kept that at 25. But most of them were kind of preaching to the choir. They liked being outside, and so they were fine with that. But those who were in the STEM element were like, this is fluff. Where's the empirical research? So we did switch it to really start with the theory and the research base to kind of get some of those resistant students on board. You might be like, well, why'd they take the course? And it's like, we go back to those liberal arts requirements that they had to have. They may have needed it for an oral and visual communication credit. And so they're in the class and they're kind of like, I don't know what this is all about. So we did switch the structure of that. I know in the last 2 years, we've had about 30 students and we've had 16 to 17 major disciplines represented. So we really do try and get a very broad type of student coming into this. It really, really makes it interesting. They're all coming in through different doors, which has been great.
And we typically have a wait list of about 70. So we would love to offer another section, but it is a physically demanding class for us, probably not for them. So at the same time, we're wondering if we could actually do that. All right.
So in offering this class, as Laura said, it took us a couple years to get it off the ground, even just getting support with our department and then getting it through University Curriculum Committee. And one of the questions that kept being asked was like, well, the research says this, but how do we know it works with our students? How do we know this is even going to be a benefit? So with our research team that had already been working on this and some of the earlier studies that Laura mentioned, we wanted to ask, like, how can being enrolled in this course help their well-being? And so we started with these two measures, and we're not going to get too bogged down in the research piece of it, but for those of you that are interested, we started with the reflection rumination questionnaire. And this one is heavily used in the research, so we felt really good about that. It's also really aligned with anxiety and depression. It's kind of an indicator of levels of anxiety and depression. And we felt like that was one of the things that our university students were really struggling with the most. They weren't leaving because they couldn't handle the academic load. They were leaving because of anxiety and depression from, a range of sources. So we really liked the rumination questionnaire, and it gives you kind of the specifics on here. I will point out that it does work on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being better. And I only point that out because when Laura talks about the results, that will be something we mention. We also liked this one because in other studies, they had paired this with fMRI in the brain and, looking at the brain as they were using this other measure. And so they were able to see that causal relationship that we were talking about. We don't have the option of using the portable fMRIs. That'd be great, but it's not in our budget or capabilities. So being able to use a resource piece that, as a data was really important for us. The other one that we added was a mental health continuum short form, and very short, 14 items, but looked at 3 specific areas of well-being. It looked at the emotional, psychological, and social elements with that. So for our design, for our earlier ones, we just looked at students in the class. For this one, we really wanted to look at the comparison piece of it. We wanted to start looking at the comparison piece. So at that point, we had 29 students enrolled in our class, and we took all the information on basic demographics and characteristics. And then we did the same thing in a couple of other courses students who were not enrolled in our course. Ended up with 73 of those students, and they were the control group. So at 4 points throughout the semester, they were taking or submitting data with those instruments at the same points in time. And you can see our response rates there. And, obviously with IRB, we had consent with the university to go through this research design. So we were finally able to get that control piece. And we did use the basic demographics to inform our control variables that we would be using in the research design. So for our analysis, and we'll talk about this very, very surface level, only because we don't do it all. We have one of our research team members is in sociology, and he's our stats guy. So if you've got really high level stats question, we can give you his information. But we used a difference design methodology. And this was really important because we couldn't randomize, and students had chosen to take this class. So we couldn't say pull your names out of a hat, you're in the course. So since we couldn't randomize, we use a difference design, and it looks at 2 different comparisons. The first one is the changes in outcome from the beginning to the end within the groups. So within our course group, we looked at their change from beginning to end, and then the control group, we looked from beginning to end. And within that group, is there a statistically significant change? And then the second comparison it makes is comparing the 2 groups, one group against the other. And so that was the second comparison that was made. This next slide is over the top with the statistics. And, if you're into that, this is going to be your information. But what I want to point out with this is that we did use the regression model because we really wanted to look and account for the control variables. We know there are a lot of things that are happening, and this talks about it a lot in the research, whether there's ethnic differences, gender differences. So we controlled for gender, race, and ethnicity, class year being like a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, because we know just their experience in the area and just life in general of what they're learning about themselves is different. And then the total credit hours, someone taking 12 versus someone taking 19, that's going to be difference in their load. And the amount of exercise, that was kind of like, how familiar are you with the outdoors? How much time do you spend outdoors? And so those are the control variables that we use throughout our analysis.
Okay, thanks, Courtney. So this is an overall slide that shows the rumination instrument. So if you look at these solid lines, the solid blue line is our control group, and it shows that they started out the beginning of the semester at 3.78, and then their rumination reduced slightly to 3.57 at the end of the semester. The green line is our class. So our class started out with a little bit higher levels of rumination, 3.97, and reduced to 3.31. So what the dashed line shows is where if our class had reduced the same amount as the control group, we should have seen them go from 3.97 to 3.75 on the dashed line, but instead they went down much farther to 3.31. And the actual numbers don't look like much, but that is statistically significant difference between these two groups' levels of rumination. So our students that took the course had significantly lower levels of rumination by the end of the class than the control group. And we feel really good about that. It was a 0.001 difference. And again, like Courtney said, Ben Sosno is our statistician, and he can explain this much better than we can. And so we'll be glad to share his information if you have really detailed questions with that. So on the mental health continuum short form, you see some of the similar things here. The blue line is the control group. The solid green is our class. And then the dashed line is where our class, you would have expected them to end up based on the same thing that happened with the control group. However, this was not statistically significant, even though it looks visually like a larger change. And so what we looked at is, as Courtney said, within the mental health continuum, there are 3 subscales. And when we looked at those 3 subscales, which are we're not looking at those top 2 lines right now, we're looking at the bottom 3 lines. Yes, thanks, Court. What we found is the psychological subscale, which is the orange 2.82. That was statistically significant when you look at between the 2 groups, the control group and our course. And when we look at the items on that particular part of the subscale, those are the items we're really looking at and that matter for what we're hoping our students will get around the idea of well-being. So the portion of the subscale was significant, where the other 2 subscales, the emotion and the social, were not significant. So basically, to answer our research question, does this class influence students' well-being? We know there are significant reductions in rumination and the psychological component of the mental health continuum when compared with like students that are not enrolled in the course across the semester.
So when we go to implications, which is kind of where we want to move forward from this, is that we know that spending time in natural environments is, it's inexpensive. It can be an accessible tool for supporting college students' well-being. Universities are spending a tremendous amount of money in expanding their counseling services and hiring new psychiatrists, and that's all great. We're totally in support of that. However, we also know that spending time in natural environments and finding a way to find space for that can be an inexpensive and accessible way to actually also help the well-being of our students. And with that, in order to create the space for it, we've got, I don't know if you've been on our campus at Trinity, but we've got a beautiful green campus. I mean, there's so much there, but without creating the credit-bearing course, it wasn't impacting in the way that we wanted to. So having that credit-bearing course creates that space, and then the time for the students to learn and practice the restorative effects of nature, which was really important, because it's kind of like, I always compare it to yoga. It's like when you get it and do it and you feel better about it, you build that practice and you kind of continue to do it a little bit. We've just finished, and we don't have the information in here, we've just finished doing kind of a longitudinal analysis, looking at students who took it in the first 3 years. And a large percentage of them are still using the sit spots and things in different ways in their daily life. So that's our goal, is that can we help them develop this practice in a way that when we send them out into the world, no matter where they are, they have ways to self-regulate that anxiety and depression. And so we know that those that participated in this credit-bearing course were able to not only learn it at that point in time, but then a large majority of them taking that forward with them. So our ongoing research is, looking at the longitudinal piece, and we're also looking at the impact of specific assignments, trying to look at, okay, we know the course does a good job of it. What parts of this course are really making the difference? So that's where our research is going, from here.
Along those specific elements of the course, there were two things that really stuck out. We haven't finished the analysis of this 3-year longitudinal study. We did 4 focus groups with students that had taken the class over those years, and we did a survey just this past spring. And what we found was a lot of the students went outside in nature, but they never thought about intentionally doing that to support their well-being. And now, for example, when they walk across campus or somewhere, they take the time to notice things that they hadn't noticed before, and they intentionally go out for different reasons. So kind of that has changed. And part of the reason that's changed is there are reflective elements built into the course. For example, the photo story is reflective, the sit spot is reflective, and other types of things that we have them purposely think about this information, not just take the information in, but think about how it impacts them and what this means. And they feel, from what we found, that is key. And of course, as being in the education department, making sure people reflect on what they're learning and are thinking about it critically is just something we always do. But it was our colleague in sociology that brought out the fact that this is not something that is necessarily always done. And he felt like that might have an impact. And that is something we found. It really did have an impact to have them reflect on these types of things. One other thing I wanted to share is anybody that's thinking about doing this kind of class is every year there's one or two that don't think this makes any difference for them. And occasionally they're vocal about that. I was thinking not last year, but the year before about one person. Yeah. And you know what? That's okay, because it's not going to be for everybody. There's nothing that works for everybody. So if you are thinking about doing something like this, or if you tried something and it may have gone just sort of okay, you know, some people liked it, some people didn't, I would not be discouraged. I think the people that need to be in the class will be in the class and they will get what they need to from it. And then word of mouth after that will kind of get around about it. I will say students seem to be hungry for something different like this, hungry for something that is just, they see it as a break in their week and they look forward to it. It's almost like not a class, but it is a class.
They do a lot of work. We don't want to make it
Yes,
sound like it's a blow off. They do
right.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
They just don't complain about it.
Yeah.
They kind of feel welcome. Yeah. And I mean, I always feel like it's kind of tooting our own horn sometimes, but they'll make comments like, this is the class I took, I needed that I never knew I needed so badly. And so, you know, when we look at students, K-12, you know, early adults in college, they just are in such great need to be able to self-regulate. The stress that's coming in is in so many different directions. And so, yeah, we've been really excited how this is looking. Now we're digging a little bit deeper onto which assignments are making the biggest difference as we continue to refine. We're going to have some links that we're going to put in the chat. One of which is just a resource folder that you can use. And I don't know how
I'll figure it out.
yeah. You need to go back to where's your Google? There you go. Oh wait, hit escape. There we go.
Okay.
We're getting it. And the other is a link to an article that do you want to scroll and just show kind of what's going to come?
I think I quit screen sharing.
Oh,
I'll pop
Here,
it in the chat.
here. And just do share again.
Okay. Sorry, we were really proficient at this during COVID and now we are not, or I'll just say I am not. So this is an article that just came out this summer, I guess. And so if you will put the link in the chat, but it talks about the class and how it's also being used to help teachers, because we know teachers are very much, their profession is very stressful. And so that's information here, and there's resources here, more resources here about the class that you can use as far as that goes. And also there's information here. This is about the sit spots we talked about. This is an example of a sit spot reflection. This describes the photo stories that Courtney talked about. And here's two examples of the photo stories and some of their
some are better than others. These are good examples, but really looking at what is nature telling them about themselves.
Yeah. So there's different things like that. And then we've got kind of what we've learned is about scheduling, what you need to be able to do this class, because it was kind of a steep learning curve for us. And then the impact of the class, we also have, this is an example of when we go on the full day field trip, we give them a different instrument. We use the profile of mood states that is like tension, anxiety, depression, things like that, and do pre and post before that we go on that field trip. And then after, at the very end of the field trip, before we come back and show them their data so that they can actually see what the impact of a full day out did for them. And Courtney does a really nice job of, we're talking about cutting everybody's individual data
apart. Back
apart.
up to that one.
Sure.
And if you look in this right-hand column, we'll see that when you look, as the group, as a, collective, that every single one of these areas is statistically significant. It's changing in the direction that you would want it to change in a statistically significant way. And so when they can see, like I've said before, they're very egocentric, and I never mean that negatively. That is their job right now, right? When they can see, oh, I've read all this research, that's not me, I'm special. When they see that long strip of, here's what we wanted to do, now here's what I did, and they can see that mirrored piece of their own body with what the data says, that's very impactful. They love those. I've had some who lost their strips and come back, can you give me another copy of that so that I can show someone? And so that was a really interesting way for them to be able to see that what they're doing in class is actually helping them personally, and they're seeing that in a consistent way. We're getting that link into the
I'm
chat.
sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to work on it. Is the link not?
Are you trying to paste it?
Why don't you try it? As we do that, I don't know if you want to, Alice, if you want to open it up for questions or not.
Stop the share.
Yeah.
Sure. There are some questions coming through as we speak, so I'm going to just start at the top. One of the most important questions, though, is if you're sharing the presentation slides and the resources.
A lot of the resources are in that article that we just shared the link to on that.
Okay.
We can share some of the slides. Yeah, I mean, they'll be also here in the recording, right? Y'all are sharing this, Alice, is that right?
Yeah, we will. We're recording and we'll share, but folks do, oftentimes
Like the slides. We can send them to Alice after this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, perfect. All right. So there's the slide question. This is from Peter Williams. With the instrument you use to measure the 3 types of well-being, how is psych well-being defined?
That's a good question. And can you,
Well, collectively,
do you want to get your computer? Courtney's going to get her computer and look that up so that we'll be accurate. Can you find the instrument?
Yeah.
Okay. If you'll give us this minute to find that.
Sure. I
We'll
can
start the next
read
question.
a nice,
Yep.
yeah, I'll read a nice comment.
Okay.
To,
Sorry. Go
while
ahead.
y'all get sorted out. It looks like you are taking it back to the bare bones of EC learning. You are teaching them how to be in nature and not just teaching them about nature. Great work.
Thank you.
Next question from Sarah Nielsen. How did y'all, I like the y'all, how did y'all approach the idea of screen time phone use outside in nature aside from the photo story assignments?
I think at the very beginning, we just talked about how that's the opposite of what we're trying to get them to focus on. And that we really talked to them about this course was really a labor of love on the part from our research team wanting to help them. It's not a class anybody asked us to create. We had to actually fight to get this course, and we have to fight to get the resources for the class, things like paying to go to the botanical gardens and things like that. So I think once we explain that we're doing this for them, and if they want to get the benefits out of this, using technology with the exception of, taking photos or maybe like the Merlin app or something like that while you're outside is counterproductive to what we're trying to teach them. So yes, we have 1 or 2, maybe of 30-ish every semester that we have to remind them to put their phones away here and there, but it's not been as big a problem as actually in my other classes that are more traditional classes. So I don't think that's really a big deal.
And during their sit spots at the beginning of the semester, there's some mention of that in their reflections. They're really funny. I mean, we tell them, like, be honest. We want to know what you're thinking, and they'll be like, this really stinks. You want me to be off my phone and sitting out here for 30 minutes. I've got an exam and you want me, and they're really resistant. And then like 4 or 5 weeks into it, you start seeing more of detail in their reflection and saying, well, I'm glad you're actually forcing me to do this. And then, towards, getting towards the end, they're really intentional about when they're doing it. I normally do it on Sunday, but I have an exam on Tuesday, so I'm waiting until then to do it before I go in. And so, it does take them a while to get off the phones, and we can't say they all do it across the board because I know they do not, but And we see them in class, they don't have them out. I mean, when
Yeah.
we're outside in different areas.
Yeah, I think overall, they're pretty good.
Great.
I'm gonna look at that.
Did you
Sure.
find the you were looking for?
Yeah.
We need to find the instruments so that we can find the actual,
This is who developed it. It was developed from the Center of Health and
okay,
Happiness.
we need to find the way they're defining psychological well-being.
I have another question.
Okay.
Similar to the one that you just answered. Technology seems to be the thing for all folks of different ages. How do we break this unhealthy habit and gear more towards the natural world to stay off the phone during a reflection sitting time?
I think Courtney's kind of, talked about that. We tell them, they're not going to get the benefits if they're on their phone. And that we share personal examples. I do sit spots in my backyard because it's got nature trails behind it. And I'll go out there, like this summer, I go out early morning because it's so hot in San Antonio. And sometimes I'll find myself picking up my phone to check the news and stuff. And I'll just have to remind myself, put your phone down. And so, fill up the bird feeder, watch the bird, what I'm trying. And so I think we talk a lot about how it's a struggle for all of us, just the society that we live in. But if you will make this intentional and just keep practicing it, just be aware of when you're doing it, I think is part of what we need to do is just be aware of how much we're actually picking up devices.
Great, thank you.
Emotional being presence of positive emotions. And with some examples of the scales of the items. There's 3.
Yes, that's not. Yeah, we need to find a little bit more than that. We're still looking.
I'm not sure.
All right, well, I
river
have
aspect.
another question for you. A lot of questions. This sounds like an amazing class. Is transportation provided for the field trips? I know some
Yes.
students that live on a college campus full-time don't have cars.
Yeah, we spend at the beginning of the course, Trinity has what they call authorized drivers. So students can submit their information, and then it just gives them another layer of kind of insurance with the university, and so they can put other students in their cars for this purpose. And we have a list, and we have it all set up of who's driving with which students. We also have university vehicles, which adds to the expense of the course, because we have to pay for mileage and gas in those vehicles, but we have Suburbans and vans that we will check out and have those available, so that those that we can't fit in individual cars, Laura and I will drive a big Suburban with students, or the 10-person van with students, to make sure we're getting them there. Yeah, we don't expect them to get themselves to any of our locations. That then becomes an equity piece of it that would bump out a lot of students. So we're very cognizant of making sure everyone has a way to get there and that they're done safely.
Great, thank you. And then someone wanted to know, where did you take the full day field trip?
We've done it 2 different locations. We have spent one day at Herdnellis Falls, which was really nice. We did enjoy that. When it's really low, that one's a little more difficult, and it's a lot farther. That one was a lot farther for us. This last year we were at Guadalupe River State Park, and even though the water was a little bit low, that still worked really, really well. With 281 fixed, it's a straight shot for us now. So it took us about 30 minutes to get out there. Our TAs who had taken the course the year before and gone to Pedernales, they then went with us to Guadalupe, and they said they liked that one better. It was faster to get to. There were, they felt like there was a bigger range of things for them to do, as far as hiking and just putting up hammocks and being in the water. And so those are the 2 we've done.
Mm-hmm.
We're open to others.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we have enough time to spend actually at the park and not spend it all on transportation getting there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, there's a fair amount of places around you all.
Yeah,
Great.
there are.
I think the water is kind of key though, because a lot of the
Mm.
parks we go to in San Antonio don't all have water. So I think it's nice to have one with a river.
Yeah.
And I will say that the state parks have worked with us on entry as well,
Mhm.
as far as knowing that it's a course, and they will sometimes get request access to our connectedness to nature scales, or data in different ways, but they've really worked with us budget wise as far as being able to have access to get all the students into the parks.
Great. Another question from Paul Vickery. Do you know of other colleges, universities, higher ed institutions that have offered similar courses?
When we started, no. When we started, the only one that we could find that even was close to this was in Harvard School of Medicine. And it was working more with doctors on why it's important, but it didn't have the practical element of students using the practices in their daily lives. So since then, I'm not sure if more have popped up. I would expect that they have popped up. We've had a couple of people at different institutions contact us, wanting to implement it where they are. We also have the syllabus on the Digital Commons, and it's been downloaded quite a bit around the world. So we're hoping some people who have downloaded it are taking and running with it. It's all open access and source, and would love to know if people are using parts of it in different ways. But we're hoping with access to the syllabus, people are able to tweak it and use it in different ways that would make sense for their student population.
Great.
All right,
Next.
I found the question about the
Okay.
psychological well-being. So it took a hot minute, as you can see. So the psychological well-being, that scale on the mental health continuum, it's all around self-esteem and self-acceptance and identity. And so there are 6 items. So self-acceptance scale, you like most parts of your personality, you're good at managing responsibilities of your daily life. You have warm and trusting relationships with others. You have experiences that challenge you to grow and become a better person. You're confident to think or express your own ideas and opinions, and that your life has a sense of direction and meaning to it. Those are the items that were actually in the psychological part of that scale, if that's helpful.
And I will say, with the scales that we use for our data collection, we're not in the business of validating instruments or, creating the theory. We know so much great work has already been done in those areas. So we rely on the research in the field to look at what instruments are being used, which have been validated, which seem to be valuable. Again, the rumination scale was paired with the fMRIs, so that was really important to us. So, when you look at the slides, if you want to look at the instruments that we used, there are definitely research links that take you to those scales themselves that will talk about the validation and why they were used and how they're used in this field of research. We relied on previous work that had done that, because that's not where we wanted to spend our time. We wanted our time to be on, now we know these things, how does it work with, students who are using it daily?
And the profile of mood states, or the POMS, has been
lot.
widely used in nature-based research, and it's very easy to use. So that's another one that students tend to understand those scales pretty well, like it's tension, anxiety, that they understand what that is. So when you show them their actual results back. So those are the reasons that we use those types of scales, because unfortunately we don't have the knowledge or wherewithal to do like MRI things.
Not yet anyway, right?
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Next question. Your program seems well-rounded. You go over connections with SEL and mindfulness, and SEL is social emotional learning, teaching different reflection, breathing methods, and being in a moment of silence. Like, you have to teach that too, probably.
We try to really, like, for example, we talk, here's what we're going to do with the sit spot. Then we go outside or go to a park, and we do that, right? And we do the same thing with photo story. We're going to talk about what the photo story is, and then have them go out and take some pictures and start, like, do it together the first time to kind of help them start to develop some of those practices with that. So I really feel like if we didn't have that practice aspect in the course, it would just be a more traditional course of, here's all the research, consume that. And whenever you have time, go utilize it for yourself, right? That was not what we wanted to do.
Well, and I think that's just we're educators. We're, taught in K-12 settings, and we work in teacher education. So it's just that idea of introduce it, model it, reflect on it, implement, so yeah.
What if we can
scaffold it in that way?
Find the link to our Trinity magazine thing to put in
my computer.
Yeah. We have lots of links. We've won an award for the class. The San Antonio Express News does awards called the San Antonio Light Award. We won that last year for the course. Just, I think, the uniqueness of it and focusing on student well-being. And our university did a big piece on the class in one of their magazines last year. And we'll try to link to some of that. I think mainly because it's just a unique idea. I think one of the keys, if you're trying to do this in a university and have it count for something, is that you're going to have to show the academic component of it. So the research and things like that you are using the research and that you are maybe collecting it, something like that. I don't think just like, for example, a pure forest bathing class at our university would probably not go over. I mean, it might maybe count for a PE credit, but it wouldn't count for the academic side of things. And so I think that's the way we are able to just get so many students in, because it is an academic. We're in an academic lane instead of like a student life lane. And that's different. Most of these types of issues that students have are dealt with on the student life side of universities, and we're on the academic side. So it's just a little bit different approach.
Great. People are definitely wanting to stay in touch with you all so that they can, perhaps glean some additional information and implement it in their own universities or other programs. And I'm just seeing if there's somebody says, Maggie says, what a great course. If you've not connected with the Bear Branches Alliance, and that's the BEXAR, Bear Branches Alliance, you may want to. I don't know what that is.
Thank you. We wrote that down. Thank you. We haven't,
okay.
I have not seen that, so that's great. Thanks.
Okay. Our friend from Portugal wants to try implementing something like this at the University of Évora. Very cool.
Great. That's wonderful.
Thanks so much. Lots of thank yous. Folks are interested in integrating it into their own programs. Peter, who asked the question about the instrument, psych instrument, he is interested in doing it into the educational leadership program at Texas A&M Commerce. Somebody, oh, go ahead.
We've actually done, but we have to put it on.
And I'm going to send it to Melissa.
Okay.
Melissa, I'm sending you a link. Can you put it in the chat in just a second?
Courtney's sending Melissa a link to put in the chat. So we have done research talks to ed leadership groups about this, and then we've taken them out for half a day to do different things. So I think it's really important for principals and administrators in education to understand the value of this, especially maybe instead of spending a whole PD day inside, could you do the morning out and then the afternoon inside doing some things so that you can really address teacher well-being instead of, unfortunately, a lot of PD days are talking at them and giving them more to do rather than helping restore the teachers themselves. So I think it would be perfect for ed leadership programs. Yes, we go to Harburger Park. That's one of our field trips. Yep.
Yeah, we use that space and we try to get a range of, some with water, some without. We do kayaking at Woodlawn Lake, which was really fun because some of them had never even been on water, which was interesting. And that goes to the research piece of it, looking at a conceptual framework of different spaces. But we do try and get them involved with different places that are close to where we are in San Antonio. We walk, if you know where Trinity is in Breckenridge Park, it's maybe half a mile, not even, it's just down a hill. And when we get there, we find that usually about 50% of the course or the students have never, ever been to Breckenridge Park. So one of our goals is just to expose them to different spaces that are around them to make it easier for them to access different places. I'm hoping Melissa got that link.
I just pasted it. Hopefully everybody.
Okay, thank you. This one's not hooked up to Zoom, so thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
And that one talks about the full day field trip. The Nature runs this course. Trinity did a piece on it, and they had some of their marketing people with us for the full day, and that was fun.
Great. And we also have a question. Can you please tell us a bit about the Forest Therapy Guides program?
That's through, there's lots of organizations that do that. We chose the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides, ANFT. They have a pretty good curriculum and program. It's a 6-month course, and then you have to do a week intensive as well. And so we felt like it was really good. And Courtney especially has been doing more with, thank you for putting the ANFT in, with that group. And it's part of, I would say some of our students really resonate with that aspect of the class. Some don't, some prefer more of the hard research, but I think it's a really nice thing to offer. So it's not all really, what do we say, on the academic side of the different, we talk about ways of knowing, and there are many ways of knowing. Empirical research is one of them, right? But that in a university setting, that tends to be often the only one that's valued. So we talk more about, how there are other types of ways of knowing that are also valued, indigenous ways of knowing, intrinsic ways of knowing that are valuable as well.
And if you're interested in forest bathing, ANFT, I think it's ANFT.earth.
She
Okay.
put it in here.
If you go to their website, they have a location feature where you can locate a forest therapy guide in your area. So if you're thinking about it, or if you're interested and you've never been on a forest bathing walk, I would suggest finding a guide, that's local to you, and go on a walk and see if it's something you're interested in.
I will also point out that Courtney
Yes.
and Laura are doing a forest bathing workshop as part of our summit, which the registration is now open. So if you would like to do a workshop with them, it's that you can sign up for the summit, and I put the link for registration for our summit in the chat as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that, Sarah. And then I did just put a link to our syllabus in the chat.
Okay. Wonderful. And then I've dropped some announcements into the chat as well. And one of which, wherever it went, we have our evaluation. So I put a link to the evaluation for you all to fill out when we finish. That helps us provide, feedback, and also we capture information about future webinar topics. Then I also put some information about our next webinar coming up August 21st at 2 p.m. It's a research update from the Center for Health and Nature. And then we talked about the summit registration being open. Let me see if there's any more related. The Texas Master Naturalist annual meeting is in San Marcos this October, and Peter put the link in for that. Lots going on. Wild Basin is having a certified interpretive guide. And then I'm putting in a link to our donation page if you would like to see more of these webinars. Making a donation helps us add to the variety of presenters and topics that we debut as part of our webinar resources and our educational resources. So if you like what you're seeing, please consider a donation to the Texas Children in Nature Network. Oh, one says the link wasn't working.
I pasted it in. If for some reason it still doesn't work, y'all, you're welcome to email us. Our emails are at the end of the presentation. We can also put them in here. That's helpful.
I think that was actually for the webinar. For the evaluation link.
All right. Great.
So I'll try the one that I had there again. And if not, then I'll try another one. And
Alice, if it's the one that you created, you probably need to open it.
Well, it was the link that you had sent me earlier. So I can go.
Oh, Sarah Jo said the eval link worked for her, so.
Oh, maybe it was a different evaluation link they were talking about.
We re-put in the digital the
Okay.
syllabus one as well, in case that was the one that wasn't working.
Okay. All right. Let me see if there's any last questions. Thanks for your feedback on that evaluation link. Looks like we got the digital commons link up. So it's almost 3 o'clock. So just want to thank everyone for their time today and their interest and the lively chat going on, all the nice comments and questions. So we will be following up with the recording and links and resources and all kinds of good stuff. So look for that sometime next week. And just want to thank everyone. We got lots of thank yous coming through. Any last words before we sign off?
We appreciate everybody's interest. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And if it's something you're interested in, just stick with it, keep going.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Have a great afternoon.
Your own statement.